From contemporary race cars, we go back to the classics, the cars built before 1980, the Scottish classic sports and saloon cars. Various types of modification appear on the cars here, but essentially it's the shapes that we're concerned with. Pole position going to the Morgan +8 of Andrew Smith, Robert Marshall alongside, then Stan Bernard and Raymond Boyd making it an all Class D second row, Shonny Patterson and Tim Reed. Then it's Kieran Bailey and Jimmy Crow, Bruce Weir and Roger Motherwell, Ian Blacklin and Nick Boyce, a bit off form in the Mini down in 18th place. Normally used to seeing Nick up at the head of the field. Andy Walker next from George Leach, then it's Ian Morton. Great to see Steve Uphill here in his car. Christy Doran lines up, having qualified in 17th place. So Robert Marshall on the outside of the front row, the Brayon Engineering prepared 55 Ford Escort RS Mark II 2-litre engine, championship leader jointly with the car that starts alongside the Russell Patterson Motorsport prepared Morgan +8 of Andrew Smith. Both stunning pieces of kit if you see them. Lights out, away we go. Ray Boyd and Stan Bernard on row 2 are going to be hassling over Class D, which looks like the closest class of the big guns. Class A very tightly contested as well. Well done to Roger Motherwell in the Alpha Sud Sprint for getting pole position. There he is in car number 68 with Ian Blacklin in the Fiesta on his inside, and Nick Boyce coming through in the Mini to make up a position. But it's Andy Smith that leads. Robert Marshall, by his own admission, not the greatest starter, finds himself down in 4th place. Andy Walker in the Triumph Sport, car number 10. Nice piece of kit. Number 6, George Leach, down behind him in the Ford Fiesta. Again, a very eclectic field, very well supported, although perhaps not as well supported as previous rounds. Still 17 cars setting qualifying times and 18 cars making the grid today, which would be the envy of many championships down in the south. Shonny Patterson running in 5th place in the TR8. Now the TR8 squadron this weekend is down to a single car, the squadron represented by Christy Doran, and Shonny Patterson not part of the squadron as such. He's his own prepared car. The engine in that machine done by Brayon Engineering, the same people that do the yellow and white Ford Escort that's challenging Ray Boyd in the blue Porsche for 3rd position at the moment. And Big Tom and Scott are going to be pleased because he's made the pass and he's up into 3rd place. Well, it's an overall pass. Remember, Robert Marshall leading his class by a fair way as Shonny Patterson looks up the inside of Ray Boyd, sees if he can squeeze through on the inside of Carlo. He's not quite far enough up to do that. The ex-rally man, Ian Patterson, Shonny to his mates, stays in 5th place, qualified 5th. Tim Reed in the Marcos GT, qualifying 6th today, and with the Class B pole position. Class A, as we said, going to Roger Motherwell. Stan Bernard taking the Class D pole, Robert Marshall Class C and Andrew Smith Class E, just to reiterate each of the drivers that qualified best in their own classes. And Class A up to 1500cc, Class B up to 1800, then we move into Class C, which is up to 2.3 to 3.6 is Class D, and 3.6 and over Class E, occasionally running an invitation Class 2 in this championship. We tend to see those on away visits, such as the touring car meeting, when other drivers come out of the mix. Kieran Bailey in 47, not too far. He's the championship leader, incidentally, in his class, Kieran. Having a good year, 5th in the championship, and leading Class B at the moment in that immaculate Escort, which was actually found, believe it or not, originally in a scrapyard. Roger Motherwell down behind him in 68. What an immaculate car. Well, they all are, actually, to be fair. The Escort looks absolutely mint. The Alpha, if you see that close up, really does look like a proper piece of racing kit as well. Then you've got Michael Connon's old car down behind them, the latest Sunbeam of Bruce Weir, which looks good. But we're going back into the mix with Stan Bernard, about to be passed by Robert Marshall. Well, he's not great at starting, as we said, but racing's a different matter, and he pops the Escort to the Marshall construction car into 2nd place. Andrew Smith is down the road at the moment, running away with this one. He told me at the start of the year that he was probably going to concentrate more on National Morgan racing, but he said you get a couple of rounds under your belt and then you start thinking about championship leads, and of course that at the moment is shared with the man who's chasing him, Robert Marshall. And it doesn't matter how hard they race each other, the Morgan and the Escort, because they're in different classes. It's about how it works. Now, I gather that in the lead up to the meeting, as Robert gets a little bit crossed up coming into the hairpin, and Stan Bernard thinks about having a look up the inside. Stan, of course, former champion. Haven't seen too much of him this year, but wonderful to see him out racing his car today. Ray Boyd running well too in the blue car in his third season of racing. And there is Nick Boys in the Mini Cooper. Surprising that perhaps we don't see more Minis in the championship. Nick always ready to do a rain dance at these events. They're going to start catching up on the back markers before too long. Good to see Steve Uphill racing with us this weekend. Steve has been out before, but that car, when we see it, was of particular interest to us supporting the touring car meeting, because it's a replica of Richard Longman's car from back in the day, Richard Longman having built the engine in it, and we'll talk a little bit more about it when we see it. But Christy Doran in the TR8, her dad John, the sports editor of the Scottish Sun, will be nervously watching, I know, from the outside of the track. But Christy's lap times are getting better and better and better. It's over a good project, I think, for Christy. For a teenager to come into a TR8, you know, a car that was built, so I think they said it was 19 years before she was born. It's a mega piece of kit for her to drive, and times have been getting better and better. Nothing wrong with her racecraft at all, as you can see by the way she dealt with the leaders coming through. She was very well aware of her place on circuit and the fast guys coming through. I think she's done a wonderful job in her first year of racing. Andrew Smith still leading from Robert Marshall. These two, I wonder what I can't recall. I'm going to have to check the regulations before our penultimate round of the season as to if there's a tie break to see who will win the championship if they tie on points, whether it will be the number of class wins, which I'm pretty sure are the same. So whether it can go back to fastest laps or something like that, I don't know, but we'll see. Otherwise, maybe the championship may have to be shared between these two. I'm reminded of the championship a couple of years ago when Robert Marshall's brother John took the championship by a single point. It was decided by a fastest lap at the last race of the year. That, I think, was 3 years ago, if memory serves correctly. But anyway, probably too early to be starting to talk about that, and we should be saying what a great drive these two are doing. Andrew Smith in the Morgan +8 is there. This is a 12-lap race as ever here, down to Scotsman. No problems with line for Andrew, who leads this one from Robert Marshall, who's trying to close in, and totally different handling characteristics, of course, between the two cars. But this Morgan, a wonderful piece of kit. Russell Patterson, of course, the former champion, very much behind the team that prepares this car. Russell, we saw at the touring car meeting at Croft, took a win in the invitation class, and his son Elliot Patterson doing well in his first season of Ginetta Junior racing as well. I wonder how many years it will be before we see some Ginettas in the classic sport, the current spec Ginettas in the classic sports and saloons, maybe a few years down the line. So Alan Barron up ahead now in the Alpha Sud Sprint, and also Ian Morton in the MG Midget. They're going to be lapped very shortly, enjoying their battle. But we go back to Kieran Bailey leading Jimmy Crowe, Bruce Weir down behind them. So Bruce in the Class C car, Kieran Bailey in the Class B machine. Kieran, as we've mentioned before, a carpenter by trade, and actually repaired Tim Reed's wooden chassis Marcus GT at the touring car meeting here at Knockhill last season. So great camaraderie in the paddock, and up the hill they go. Kieran doing a fantastic job at the moment. Kieran Bailey in the 1600cc, hence Class B car. Jimmy Crowe in the 2-litre version. Now, can Bruce Weir close in? Bruce Weir running in Class C, Jimmy Crowe as well. We'll see whether they can take the battle down to Kieran Bailey. You do have to come up and see these cars. They are so immaculately prepared, and it's wonderful to see a variety of machines. Of course, the Mark 1 Escort from the late 60s, the Talbot Sunbeam Lotus from the later 70s, mid to later 70s. The Sunbeam probably more synonymous with rallying than circuit racing. The Escorts, of course, very much synonymous with both, and the Morgan continues to lead. So Andy Smith not getting away from Robert Marshall. It looks like these two are going to add 2 more class wins to their tally in race number 1 of the weekend, round 11 of the Scottish Classic Sports and Saloon Championship. Nick Boy's running well, but I can tell you in Class A at the moment it's Andy Walker in the Triumph Sport that leads Class A from George Leach, with Nick Boys in 3rd place and poleman Roger Motherwell down in 4th. Always keen to keep an eye on the other classes here. But Andrew Smith it is. There's Nick Boys, and you can see up the hill Andy Walker at the top of the hill in the Triumph Sport is there, but it's the checkered flag for Andrew Smith from Robert Marshall. Class E and C winners respectively. Shonny Patterson will take 3rd place and 2nd position in Class E in the Triumph TR8, the number 88 car. And there's Class A, the battle for Class A you saw going through the traffic. And it's Andy Walker that's taken the flag in A from George Leach in the Ford Fiesta, with Nick Boys coming home in 3rd. Nick perhaps waving cheerio to the chance of the overall championship, but very much still in command in Class A. George Leach will close in on Ian Morton for 2nd position in the Class A standings. But this race overall, once again, about the Morgan Plus 8 of Andrew Smith and Robert Marshall in the Mark II Escort 1st and 2nd. Shonny Patterson 3rd. Stan Bernard wins Class D ahead of Ray Boyd. Kieran Bailey, the Class B winner, in 6th place ahead of Bruce Weir, then Jimmy Crowe and Ian Blacklin. Class A winner Andy Walker from George Leach and Nick Boys. Those 3 right together. That's how close Class A is this year. Roger Motherwell next from Ian Morton. Alan Barron in 15th place from Christy Doran, and Steve Uphill in the Fiesta comes home in 17th.
Welcome to another episode of Racing No Filter. Joining me in sunny California, Bill Wood, and down in sunny Florida, Peter Keene.
We're going to take a look at some of the products HPD has created for the 2012 Honda Civic, and specifically we're going to show you how to install an adjustable sway bar.
Until then, folks out there, you take care.
Want to keep up with all the racing action at the track? Well, download the new GoRacingTV iPhone and Android app. And remember to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter.
Andrew Smith on pole with Robert Marshall alongside. Row 2, Shonny Patterson and Stan Bernard, then Ray Boyd and Kieran Bailey in 6th. 7th, Bruce Weir with Jimmy Crowe, then Ian Blacklin and Andy Walker. The top dozen completed by George Leach and Nick Boys. Roger Motherwell 13th, then Ian Morton and Alan Barron. Christy Doran in 16th with Steve Uphill 17th, and Tim Reed completing the grid, hopefully in the Marcos GT. So 18 cars on circuit. Tim Reed is there, which is very good news. Being told that Roger Motherwell sadly not taking the start, the pole position man in Class A for race number 1, so didn't turn out too well for him in race 1, and not great here with a non-start. Stan Bernard gets away well, and so too does Shonny Patterson, who's looking, but it's 3 wide, and Shonny pretty much blocked by the first 3 drivers. Jimmy Crowe gets ahead, or does he, of Kieran Bailey? There is Ray Boyd in the Porsche. I neglected to mention Ray Boyd in race 1, 4th in the championship, the Class D leader from Stan Bernard and Robin Ben. Robin in the 3 litre Capri, who's not with us this weekend. But a cracking start these wonderful cars make here at Knockhill Circuit. And, well, I was lucky enough to be at the Croft BTCC away day, and I can tell you that, you know, those of us that remember these cars but racing back in the day enjoyed them. But I had a number of younger spectators, teenagers, who were asking about the different types of car, and some in particular picked out the TR8s that were there. Had never seen a TR8 before, let alone seen one race, so it was a marvellous spectacle for them to see these cars. And the point I'm making is that this sort of racing is appreciated by those of us that remember the cars in the first place, as well as those who didn't, who like to see them and understand the technology and to see what proper cars look like back in the day. Shonny Patterson got the fastest lap in race 1, didn't tell you that during the first race, but he's there in 88, the Iron Brew sponsored car, and World X-Back machine is chasing down Ray Boyd at the moment. Raymond Class D, Shawnee running in Class E. Jimmy Crow is 6th in the championship. Just try and fill you in on the places that we didn't discuss in race number 1. Ian Morton 7th in the MG Midget. George Leach in the Fiesta 8th. Christy Doran 9th in the championship. Stan Bernard 10th. So probably enough information about championship positions for you there. And race leader in this one again is Andrew Smith. Let's see how it all pans out. There's always a little bit of a worry apparently at this meeting that the number of starters, there were 3 starters in Class E and you need 3 to get the maximum points, because otherwise we might see one of the other classes nab the main points, and I think that might have been a concern for Andrew Smith in this one. So Shawnee Patterson's appearance at this meeting, good news for Andrew Smith in terms of the overall championship, and Shawnee there down behind Raymond Boyd. Now of course, on one hand, it's really good for Andrew Smith that Shawnee Patterson's out there, because it means maximum points for class. But on the flip side, Shawnee Patterson got the fastest lap in race 1. If he does the same here and carries that form right the way through the race and takes the race win, he's going to take points away from Andrew Smith, and that potentially could play into the hands of Robert Marshall in Class C, which is contested by obviously Robert Marshall, Jimmy Crow in the Mark 1, and also Bruce Weir in the Lotus Sunbeam. Just the 3 entries in that class as well. So a little bit nip and tuck in both classes in terms of entries, because the points drop down from 25 for a win down to 12 points if there are less than 3 starters in the class. Well, no worries in terms of the overall grid, because we've got 18 cars on the grid this weekend. As we said, Roger Motherwell sadly not out in this race, but we're looking at Ray Boyd in Class D, still dicing hard with Shawnee Patterson. What's happened to Stan Bernard? It looks like he's dropped back in the Porsche 911, which is a great shame. Stan, I think, having a few problems with the car. Shawnee giving chase, seems to be the pace setter again. Robert Marshall still in 2nd place in the Mark II Escort. There is Shawnee putting pressure under Raymond Boyd, who will pick up the points for the class win here. See a little bit of door handling, but they don't mind going 3 wide. Stan Bernard trying to come back up into the mix. Tim Reed down behind him. Jimmy Crow at the moment 5th place, the white Escort in the distance, and Jimmy 2nd in Class C, not that far behind Robert Marshall actually. So this is a good performance from Jimmy. 3rd place in Class C is Bruce Weir in the Sunbeam, so it's nice just to take stock of these different drivers as they go through. Andy Smith from Renfrewshire still out front, but there is Tim Reed, the Stirlingshire man, in the 1660 Marcus GT. Stan Bernard still enjoying his racing car number 1. This is exactly what he races for, to get involved with other cars on the circuit, as Kieran Bailey locks up going into the hairpin, keeps it out of the gravel, and off goes Stan Bernard and Bruce Weir. Stands on the grass, he's going to rejoin. We've got the Class A leader, George Leach, coming through in the Fiesta. Well, the little 1500cc Fiesta manages to get past. You can see Nick Boyce still in 2nd place, just ahead of Andy Walker. Really good racing going on in Class A. It's always a close competitive scrap between those boys. If they had enough of them, I guess they could probably have their own race. So maybe some incentive if you've got a classic car that was built pre-1980, why not bring it out and race and see if we can get separate class races. It does happen from time to time in the Classic Scottish Sports and Saloon Championship. Nick Boyes is the driver's rep now, and I well remember separate races going on when Stan Bernard was in charge a couple of seasons ago, but the numbers still good enough to give us some fantastic action as we look at Stan trying to get down the inside of Tim Reed in the Marcos. Let's see whether he can do it. Hard on the brakes as they come into the hairpin. And I've said it before and I'll say it again, the hairpin here is a real climb. It's not just a straightforward hairpin, it's a very steep climb as well. And for some reason you just seem to lose it on any camera work. It doesn't matter who films here, you just don't see how much of a climb it is. And it's the start of the climb, up the hill and up over the start-finish line. Once you get over the start-finish line, it's a drop down, gently first, and then down towards Duffus and into Scotsman Corner where the cars are now. So Stan Bernard, things going a little bit better for him, and he'll see whether he can try and close up. Second place at the moment in Class D for Stan. Raymond Boyd leading that one. Still Andy Smith out front. Bruce Weir trying to close up the gap to the 2 cars in front of him at the back of this, if we could call it a quartet. Certainly a quartet that was in shot just now. Kieran Bailey, the second of them, the red gold car. Leader of Class A in the Fiesta is George Leach. Here comes the second car. Now what's happened to Nick Boys? So we can see Nick in the background. Can't see him at the moment. So Bruce Weir at the moment in 8th place. Jimmy Crow 5th. 6th is Stan Bernard. 7th place Kieran Bailey. Actually 8th place is the Marcos, and then Bruce Weir in 9th. So 10th is George Leach, still the leading Class A runner. So Andrew Smith still leading Class E from Shawnee Patterson. Going down the classes, Class D, Ray Boyd, as Tim Reed gets it all a little bit crossed up at Scotsman Corner ahead of Bruce Weir. Class D led by Ray Boyd. Class C at the moment is headed by Jimmy Crow. Kieran Bailey leading Class B. Class A at the moment to the good of George Leach in the Fiesta, who goes through back of shot there. And a good healthy lead he's got. So Stan Bernard ahead of Jimmy Crow, and consequently up into 5th place. Shawnee Patterson with the fastest lap again. Now what we don't know at the moment is how close to Andrew Smith he's got. Robert Marshall will be in close proximity as well. I can't see anybody beating Andy Smith today, to be perfectly honest. That Morgan really, once it gets up to full chat, is a difficult car to beat. Here we go, back to 2nd and 3rd place. Well, I'll tell you what, there's not actually too much in it. The white car you've just seen past is Alan Barron, the Alpha Sud Sprint. Up the hill goes Andrew Smith, past Christy Doran, who's in 14th place at the minute. Ian Blacklin in the Ford Fiesta running 13th. So Andrew Smith making progress through the field. Ian Morton down there. 2nd place is still Robert Marshall. That's in the white and yellow Ford Escort Mark II. Shawnee Patterson in 3rd place, the TR8. The other TR is, of course, Christy Doran, now finds herself a lap down. But I said again, her lap time's getting better and better. They're working their way through the traffic. And Andrew Smith, I don't think an overall win necessarily is going to be the order of the day here, because Robert Marshall seems to be getting closer and closer to him round by round. Blue flag out for Andy Walker, 3rd in Class A, so he gets lapped. Race leader Andrew Smith still on his way. Robert Marshall, I think, has perhaps lost a couple of lengths maybe as they've negotiated the back markers. Robert gets it all sideways, but it's another win for Andrew Smith. Andy Smith takes it, and look at that, Andy Walker acknowledging 3rd place in the Triumph Sport in Class A. George Leach is going to win that from Nick Boys, but Smith the winner from Shawnee Patterson. Robert Marshall, class win for him. Ray Boyd wins his class. Jimmy Crow wins his class, 2nd in his class from Kieran Bailey. Bruce Weir 7th, then Tim Reed. George Leach, the Class A winner. Nick Boys is 2nd in class, ahead of Andy Walker. Then Ian Blacklin. Christy Doran 13th from Ian Morton. Alan Barron 15th from Stan Bernard, who drops back at the end. And Steve Uphill in the Fiesta coming home in 17th place. The overall championship jointly led by the Class C and E leaders, Robert Marshall and Andrew Smith. The Class A leader, Nick Boys, is 3rd in the championship. Ray Boyd, who heads Class D, 4th. And the Class B leader, Kieran Bailey, is 5th in the championship.
Well, there we go, folks. That's all we have time for from Knockhill Racing Circuit. Please join us next time for a lot more exciting action.